I had people come up to me afterwards like, "You did such a good job. You sounded so good." I'm like, "You have to say that. We're in church." And then my pastor, Monty, comes back up to me after it was all over, and he said this one sentence that I've never forgotten. He said, "You are going to be a public speaker one day."
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of your favorite teacher's favorite teacher podcast. One of my favorite teachers in my current position has graced us with his presence today. Like going into this guy's classroom, like I see so many things that I did with my students when I was in the classroom, which I'll be going back here in a little bit. And I'm going to use a lot of the stuff that he uses with his kids to make sure that they are engaged in the classroom. So I'm going to let this young man tell you guys a little bit about himself. You got the floor.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Whiteley. I teach at Wood Creek Junior High, along with Mr. Stubblefield over here. I've been in education itself for close to 13 years. Taught in Katy for this will be my 10th year. And before I was in education, I was a youth pastor. That's actually what I went to college for. And so I had my degree in youth and family ministry, and then I went back to school and got my alternative certification so that I could go into the classroom. And now I'm back in school again at University of Houston downtown, so that I can get my certification to be an assistant principal. So educational leadership is my master's degree that I'm working towards.
Fantastic. Why don't you tell the audience what subject you teach?
Oh, yeah, that's important. Yeah, I teach reading and writing.
Have the whole time, have you done that your whole career?
Most of the time. I did do social studies for a little bit.
Just like
There was one year when I was in, so I taught elementary school first before going into junior high. And I did do some social studies in there. They normally paired that with reading and writing. And there was one year I just taught writing. That was it. We had a rotation.
That's good.
And that's all I did. And anyone that is familiar with writing teachers, you know how much they love to grade writing samples. And that's pretty much all I did for 10 months.
Fun time. Fun time. So I mean, and you kind of walked us through a little bit of the next section, the section that I like to call the journey.
The
And
journey.
what I'd like you to do is talk to the audience about your journey from the time that you made the decision to become an educator to where you are right now in this journey of becoming an administrator. I'm sure that they would love to hear all of the ins and outs of what you are going through now.
Sure, sounds good. So I am definitely a believer that you don't have to be in a classroom to be a teacher. So my desire to teach goes all the way back to my first career when I worked as a youth pastor. I wanted to work with that age and encourage them, be someone that they could lean on, build them up. A lot of the things that teachers do, good teachers do in a classroom, those are the things that I was doing. And whereas in a school classroom, they have no choice. They have to be there, right? The state of Texas says they have to be there, right? Or whatever state you live in. In my profession at the time, it was how do I get students to be there when they have a choice? And that really resonated with me in what my purpose was, what my direction was. I couldn't come in with a specific attitude of you're going to listen to me. I have the good stuff. So sit down and be quiet and let me talk to you, because they never come back. Right. It had to be something more. I had to have something more to offer them. So after doing that for a certain amount of time, I moved to Houston, and I felt like that was a really good time for a kind of a shift in my profession. I still wanted to teach, but I really, really, really wanted to be in a classroom. That was my favorite part of what my job was before. And I said, I want to do that all the time. I don't want to do nothing else but be in a classroom. So that's when I got my alternative certification. And my first job was at this, I don't even think this location even exists anymore. It's like a private school. And it was like a small private school. I think I taught third, fourth, and fifth grade, okay, all at the same time, but I only had 10 students uh, across all three of those grades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of a nice get your feet wet kind of moment
Mhm.
as I'm learning the ins and outs of this. Um, After that year, I went to uh, a a different elementary school, um, different district, and I taught there for 1 year. And after that, I was trying to get into the district that's closer to home, KDISD, get it because that's where we live. Um, I wanted to get into that district specifically, and I tried for 2 years, and I couldn't get my foot in the door. Sometimes just getting your foot in the door is the hardest thing. And once I was able to have some more experience, I felt a little more confident in my abilities. Um, After that second year, had a lot more interviews, had some callbacks, so I was feeling good about it, and I didn't get any. I did not get any returns. I'm like, oh man, okay. And um, a friend of mine who's in a neighboring district was going to hire me as a teacher at their school, different district, not super close, right? But I'm like, okay, let me consider it. He offered me the job and he said, just get back to me in like 24 hours. I said, okay. I'm on the way home from that interview, and the principal at Schaefer Elementary, which is literally the elementary school that is down the road from where we lived, just called me out of the blue. I didn't even know they had any openings. And she calls me and says, we looked at a lot of resumes. For whatever reason, yours jumped out to us.
Mm.
And she said, would you be willing to come in for an interview? And if my memory serves me right, I don't even think I gave her the opportunity to finish the sentence before I said yes. I was ready to go. I was like, do we even need an interview? Just offer me the job now. I don't really care what it is. Um, but no, I did want to go in and make sure it was a good fit for me. And it was. It was. And they interviewed me, they hired me. So you never know what's going to fall into your lap at one specific point.
Right.
And that's how it was with me. And so I worked in that school for, like I said, 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, somewhere around there. You just lose track at some point. And I taught third, fourth, and fifth. And um, I felt like that was the right time after I'd gone through a certain number of years in elementary school. I always knew that I wanted to go back into junior high. That was my wheelhouse in my first profession. I
Right.
just I feel like I could speak their language. I feel like I can relate to them, which, as an adult isn't always a good thing if you relate to an adolescent. I'm, take that for what you will. And um I was going to do it a few years before that, but then when COVID hit, it just wasn't a good time for a transition. Um Everyone was doing school virtually and all those things. Like, nah, I'll stay where I'm at for right now. And I really wanted to get into Wood Creek, which is where I teach now. In fact, the namesake of Schaefer was the first principal. She was the first principal at Wood Creek.
Oh, wow. Didn't know
Yeah. So she was definitely on my reference list.
that.
That's some good street cred from that one. And uh, I went in for an interview, and it was a really terrible interview. It just went horribly, horribly. Like, it was one of those where they ask these questions and they're going to ask these questions and you're prepared with responses, but the right responses did not come to my mouth. I don't know what happened between here and here. It just didn't get there.
Got lost in.
And I remember calling my wife afterwards, and I went, oh, it was so bad. I gave some of the worst answers ever. Like, they sounded so horrible in my brain, and she was, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. I'm sure it wasn't as bad. Oh, it was bad. It was bad. And and I never got a call back. Surprise, surprise. And well, that ship has sailed, right? A few months go by, they open another position, right? And it's seventh grade English.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let's try this again, right? Maybe second time's the charm. And that one went much, much better. Of course, in my mind, I was like, nothing could have been worse than that first one. But that one went really well. They pretty much offered me the job on the spot, and one of the ones who interviewed me turned out to be my team lead. Um, she was one of the ones who interviewed me, and we had a pretty good rapport just with kind of our teaching styles, and some of the things that we wanted to do seemed to line up pretty well. Um, and they also asked me to do National Junior Honor Society sponsors, so I ended up doing that as well, which I really love doing that too, because it has that element of service,
Mhm.
um, which is something that I'm very individually passionate about, helping others, empathy, and leadership. So took that job. I've been doing that the last 2 years, and it has been some of the best 2 years of my teaching career. Like this is where I love to be. Um, and that's not to say I didn't enjoy what I was doing before,
Mhm.
but I love using my teaching platform to teach teenagers
Mhm.
leadership and personal skills, interpersonal skills that will help them beyond the classroom.
Right.
Um, it's so important to me that students understand how to successfully communicate with other people, which I feel as time goes on becomes less and less common. How do you communicate with people um, in a successful way, in a meaningful way? Um, so yeah, that's been kind of my journey. And then just this past year, I decided to take that leap of furthering my education, going for my master's degree. Um, uh, Something that I had been mulling around for a little bit. Um, but again, I love leading people. I love leading my students. I love leading other adults. I like being that person that others can count on and rely on. And to be able to be an inspiration to others and build them up to a point where they can be better versions of themselves, there really is nothing that brings me more joy than that. So,
I mean, and before we go into the next portion of the podcast, there's some stuff that you brought up that I want you to simply expound upon a little bit. You talked
okay.
about when you first began, you had three grade levels that you were teaching at one
Hmm.
time, even though it was a small class. As an educator, we have what we call preps. We have to prepare the lessons for those students, and there's a lot that goes into preparing the lesson.
Hmm.
And so, like, what was that like for you to have to do three different grade levels of students? And then let's also, I'd like you to talk about what was it like for you to have a class size so small, uh, starting out in that position?
Time consuming.
Right.
It was time consuming because you don't want to, and keep in mind this is my first foray into teaching, right? So I
Right.
want to I want to be good,
Hmm.
right? And I have these um, you know, sky high expectations of what kind of person I want to be in the classroom. So um, it it took a long time, I think, more time than I thought to get used to what needed to be done behind the scenes.
Right.
Because before it it wasn't as much. My first profession as a youth pastor, there wasn't too much, excuse me, that I needed to do to get ready for interaction with my students. This one, I needed something different every day. I needed three different things, three different levels, and I needed to be able to communicate to each of those student groups, those student grades, with all of them in the same room at the same time. So there is a lot of, I don't know, carryover in my lessons. Um, there are times we might have read the same book or the same unit, and I had to just scaffold certain things for different groups because that was the only way that I could teach, you know?
Right.
It wasn't like, okay, I need y'all to go put earplugs in because I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to this group, right? Just turn around, just put your fingers in your ears and hum. Okay. I couldn't do that. So I really had to get creative with how was I going to reach each group and not push the third graders so high that they're doing fifth grade material, but not bring the fifth graders down that their their content is too simple for them. So there's a lot of back and forth.
And so I know as an educator, a lot of us, we have those class, and you too now have those class sizes of 30, 32 students in a class. But what was it like to have that smaller group, even though it was different levels? Like, can you talk about the difference between having a small class size versus having what an average, I say average, what we have now, uh,
Right.
classroom?
More than 10. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It you can give that personal attention to them. You
Yeah.
know, when your class is about the size of a small group,
Hmm.
you have a lot more availability for independent counseling, um, almost like tutoring. Um, I can just focus on you right now because I have the time.
Hmm.
I have the ability. And I can hit everybody in a day, maybe two,
Wow.
right? The
Yeah.
class sizes that we get today, yeah, there's no way that you could have a touch point the way that you would want to with everybody in the time that you have, especially in a day. And that was really the challenge for me when I moved into an elementary school that, had a larger class size. It was how do I give them that individual attention or even that small group attention when I have three times the students, right?
Right.
And and I have two separate groups, right? So I don't even have them all day, but I felt like moving from that private realm to that public realm, there was a whole lot more expectation on making sure that you teach them XYZ and
Hmm.
make sure you teach it in this specific way, right? So that expectation, that rigor definitely went up,
Okay.
which I expected. I expected that was going to happen. But I remember that first year coming into public school, I ran out of time all the time,
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and any student that's been in my classroom knows that I talk a lot. So I already have issues with time management when it comes to uh, what I want to say to them. I have a little um, Alexa in the corner of my room that tells me how much time I have left.
Hmm.
You have 15 minutes left, right? So that I know, okay, I got to wrap this up, right? I can't just keep talking, you know. Um, but I definitely think time management between moving from that small group to that much larger group, I had to relearn how to do some of the things that I had taught myself how to do in that smaller group setting.
Wow. That is a huge thing. That time management. And and I'll ask you this: the do you think that it is beneficial, um, being able to have that one-on-one time with the students versus um, doing that whole group teach that we do with the groups that we have? How do you feel about that?
I think they both have value.
Right.
Um, I think there are things that it would take a long time and a whole lot of extra unnecessary effort if you had to go to every single person and tell them the same thing.
Right.
You know, I think that there are elements of teaching where you have to have that, you know. But what I'm discovering as I guess I could say growing up in my teaching and growing up in the age groups that I work with, because I started young,
Hmm.
um, I could take a group of students and bring them to we call them our kidney tables,
Hmm.
right? And they all were kind of at the same spot in their learning and their abilities. And so I could categorize them together and I could pull like a small group and work on pronouns, right? Or I could pull a small group and work on introductions,
Right.
right? Because I knew that they all struggled with that. And so I could I could have, 5 or 6 touch points and do them all at the same time, which is it's pretty common elementary school practice.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into junior high, the gaps that I was seeing were much more scattered, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't pull a small group, like here are all the people that need help writing an introduction. Well, really, there's only like one, maybe two that struggle with that, right? And then I might have one, two, maybe three that struggle with when to use pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little more scattered as to what the need is.
Okay.
And so I've gotten more bang for my buck just having those individual touch points with those students.
Right.
I really don't pull small groups in my junior high classroom. I'm looking at what you're doing, and as I'm just kind of walking around the room, I'm watching what it is that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and do I see any gaps that I can help you fill? Or when we're taking an assessment, looking at that data, looking at the objectives, where's a commonality as far as some of those objectives that people are missing? And that's the thing. It's either like one or two of them, or it's like half the class, right? There's nowhere in between. So it's like, okay, I'm either going to talk to this group individually, or I might as well just do another whole group lesson,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's what
Um,
it is.
right. So it's a different world whenever you're doing that conferencing time from elementary school to junior high, right? It's not the same environment.
I get that. And you spoke a little earlier about like as you're growing as an educator, you are developing your time management uh,
Hmm.
differently. And you spoke earlier also that you're going on this journey to become an administrator. I
Hmm.
know a long time ago when I went through my master's program, I was doing it as I started out in education as well. And that took a
Hmm.
lot of time management to do that. But for you, and we have hopefully educators that listen to this podcast as well. Some of them may aspire to become an administrator, but think to themselves, I don't have time to
Hmm.
do all of this work in my master's program on top of the time that it takes for me to grade papers, to get those lessons together. So, like, I'd like for you to talk to the audience a little bit about this time management method that you use to help
Hmm.
you not only create that outstanding lesson that I've seen when I walk into your classroom, but also still have time to do the other aspects of your work towards your principal program.
Well, my wife could certainly attain to this. When I started the graduate program, I was worried. I didn't know if I was going to be able to handle what I signed up for. It was a big adjustment from what I was doing before. And rightfully so. You're getting your master's degree. Mine is all online.
Hmm.
Um, I don't go into the campus at all. I mean, I've actually been to the campus maybe twice.
Right.
Um, and I think the I think what you have to do first is you have to find the right program for you, because everybody's life is different. Everybody's family situation is different. Um, the amount of money that you spend on it is different. So I think you have to look around at what your options are and say, well, this one's close to my house. I'll just go with that one. They're probably all the same. They're really not.
Hmm.
I looked at probably 5 or 6 different schools, narrowed it down to 3, and then narrowed it down to one. And I did. I applied for all of them, right?
Right.
Um, of course, then the ones that you apply for, they call you back and they say, "So when are you going to start? Sign up for your classes." I'm like, "Well, I already did, but it's not at your school." They didn't like that. But you have to figure out which one works for you, because some of them, like I have friends that are in other graduate programs, they're done in a year or a year and a half, right? And so they're going to be speeding things along a little bit faster. Maybe you have the availability to do that. Others may take up to 3 years. Mine takes 2 years.
Right.
So I think just exploring your options is probably the first piece of advice that I would give someone that's looking for any kind of graduate program. The second thing is just know what you're signing up for.
Hmm.
Real know what it is that you are committing to. Um, because it's not really, I don't find myself fitting it in, right? I find myself sacrificing other things
Okay.
so that I can do school. because there is just not enough hours in the day to do everything that I want to do already. And then I'm going to put a master's degree on top of that. So my wife and I, we had many very serious conversations about what our home was going to look like as I'm doing this graduate program.
Mm,
I won't be able to do as much of, fill in the blank, as I would like to because I have to go write a paper,
right.
you know? So I think when I say you have to know what you're signing up for, it's going to take sacrifice, and not just from you, but also all of the people that you live with, and just making sure that they're on board with this too. Um, I mean, even the room that I'm in right here this is like my study room. This is where I go to do my school stuff, right? It's got a closed door. This room used to be something completely different before I started school, right? Well, now it's my escape so that I can go and write or read or do whatever it is that I need to do. This is where I have my classes in here. Um, so yeah, know what you're signing up for, and if you're married, make sure that they know what you're signing up for too, because they're going to have to make sacrifices as well, just as much as you are. They're going to have to pick up the slack where you are leaving off. So but it can be done.
Mm,
It can be done. That I guess that'd be the third thing I said. It can be done. I have a wife, and between the two of us, there are 6 kids that live in this house, and one of them just turned 2. So, I dare someone to come up and tell me, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have, I'm married and I got, 2 kids. I just don't have time. Don't come tell me that. You
right.
can do it,
Right.
right? If you want something bad enough, you can do it. You'll find the time, right? You make something a priority, and you'll find the time to get it done.
Make it
So,
happen.
hmm
And it's so you're telling them make sure that they know what they're getting into, do that research, find out which campuses fit them and their
hmm
what it is that they're doing. Make sure that you get uh, buy-in from those who are your support system as well, because that's huge. When I went through my program, I did the same thing as you. I spoke with my wife. I was like, "Hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm uh, thinking about, and it's going to take time away from us being able to do fill in the blank."
hmm
And so, like, if you don't have that buy-in,
hmm
life can make your life miserable.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well, and she's
get
been
others.
she's been amazing with,
Right.
taking care of, you know, all 6, right? While I'm in here in the peace and quiet, and I'm, got my headphones on and reading, right?
Hmm.
And I hear one of them, screaming about something,
Right.
right? And
Right.
my first instinct is to get up and, go do it, but no, she's got it. She's got it. She told me that, she would take care of those things so that I wouldn't have to, and she has. She's been a fantastic support system through this journey. There's no way that
Hmm.
I would have been able to get anywhere close to completing this without her help.
And if we got any supporters out there in the audience listening to this podcast, your flowers, we want to give them to you because I know I've gone through this and I wouldn't have been able to do it without my wife. And
Hmm
Chris can contest to this as well. He wouldn't be able to do it without his support system as well.
hmm
Um, and here's the thing, guys. This brings us to the next part. We're talking about the ups and downs, the hardships of trying to get that master program knocked out. And this leads us into our next part, the yin and the yang of being an educator, the best days and worst days of being an educator. And
hmm
this portion of it, Chris, what I'd like you to do is just talk to the audience about your worst and best days. When I have people on, I try to start off with that worst day and end on a happy note with your best day.
hmm
So I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you talk to the audience about what it was like as an educator, your worst and best day in these many years.
Okay, so worst day. I had to really think about this when I'm like, man, which one do I choose? You know, which one? So I got a funny one and I got a not so funny one,
Okay.
right? So this is, let's see, 4th year in education. It's my 2nd year teaching at Schaefer Elementary in Katy, um, 3rd grade, and first day, right? You know this is a good worst day story when it happens on day 1, and you go through the whole welcome to my classroom. We're glad you're here. We're going to have a good year. I'm going to be your best friend. We're going to, let me tell you about myself. Let me tell you why, you should think I'm a cool teacher, right? And I'm showing them pictures like, here's my family. Here are things that I've done. I've been skydiving, um, and I'm going through my whole process, and everyone's paying attention. They're I they look interested, right?
Hmm.
And there's this one young lady in the back of the room that I will not name, okay? And she stands up right in the middle of all of this. She just stands up without warning, and she looks as though she's addressing the whole room, I guess. She doesn't look at me. It's all like she's looking at all the other students that are in the room. And she yells at the top of her lungs, "Will this guy just get on with it?"
Oh, wow.
And I'm just frozen in time in that moment, right? Because I don't have a rapport with this young lady,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. Is this a common thing for her? I don't know. Um, Maybe I am talking too much. Is it me? Or do I get upset at her? Do I need to make her an example? Like, don't interrupt me, you know?
She actually
And I'm
had.
going through all of these different things in my head of like, what do I do here? This is day one, right? Um, and as the year went on, we did build a rapport. Um, she was definitely one of my most memorable students for many reasons. Um, and her and her family, they're still in Kate. I actually taught her brother um, in another one of my classes. Um, so I was kind of half expecting, when I did the whole first day thing, like, oh man, this is gonna happen again, but it didn't. Um, and sometimes I'll see them. Um, and I remember the last time I happened to see her, I think it was like at a football game or something like that. And I always bring it up. Remember when I took too long on that day once? She's like, yeah, I remember. You know, so it's funny the things that students do
Yeah.
that you look back on, like in the moment, it's not funny. It's not funny at all, but you can look back on it and go, okay, that was kind of funny. Um, so, but if I'm gonna be serious, um, my worst day, it's not really anything that a student has done, or where I've been offended or anything like that. Um, my worst day or days, and this has happened unfortunately multiple times, is when another teacher approaches me and says, "I'm ready to quit. I want to quit today. I can't do this anymore." And it's happened to me, I'll just say multiple times. And and it breaks my heart a little that something that knowing all teachers come in with this passion of wanting to change kids' lives, wanting to communicate knowledge to them, wanting to be someone that students can look up to as an example, and they've just had enough for whatever reason, right? And you don't know what it is. I mean, sometimes it's the students, sometimes it's, the people they work with, sometimes it could be the administration. I mean, whatever it may be, it's not important. Whatever the reason is um not as heartbreaking as when someone that has a talent for teaching and they can't do it anymore because of the situation that they happen to be in, right? Because then I ask myself, well, what can I do to help you, right? And sometimes I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know how I can help you, especially in my in my position that I'm in. I don't have a lot of power. I mean, I can support, I can say I'm sorry, you know, I hope things get better for you, but it's it's hard to see it's hard to see teacher burnout, and not just when it's played out in front of you just by their body language, but when they go so far as to verbalize it. And that's a hard thing to stomach and to hear from your coworkers.
It is. It really is. I um I remember when I first started in education, there was a situation where I'm a friendly person, so I try to get to know
You are,
everybody.
for sure.
This young lady from another department called over to my classroom when I was on break and asked me to come over to her class. Um, and when I came to her class, she was like, I have a class right now. I need to run out to my car right fast and get some. Can you watch the class? Sure. So a few minutes passed and a few more
Oh
minutes
my gosh.
and it was almost time for me to go back to my class because one of my classes was starting. Come to find out, the young lady like left, just left, and to see, and to me, you talk about witnessing that burnout. A lot of times we
Hmm.
don't know that that burnout happened until it's too late. You know,
Yes.
uh,
You don't know that the people that are struggling are in fact struggling
right,
for
right.
sure.
Like if anyone had told me before that incident that this young lady was struggling, I would have never imagined it
Hmm.
because the face that they put on. And I think a lot of ways that has to do with the view that people have of us as educators. People see us as those caring individuals that uh, are there for kids. And
Hmm.
for us to show that we are struggling with things, that we are
Hmm.
having an issue, like we take that and we bottle that and we put that down because we want to be that ray of sunshine for our students. And we know the effects that it can have on students when we come in and we're down, you know?
Hmm.
So, man, yeah, I understand that as being one of your worst days. It's unfortunate a lot of teachers have that story to
Yeah.
tell, and it should not be the case.
Hmm.
Um, but to lighten up the mood a little bit, why don't you talk to the audience about your best day as an educator?
I got a lot of good ones too. A
Awesome.
lot of good ones, way more good ones than bad ones,
Mhm.
which I'm very thankful for. Um, I know that one of my best days was when I was hired to be a junior high educator
Mhm.
because it was something that I was working for a long time, knowing that this is where I want to be, and I was waiting just for the right moment to do that. Um, and you know, I started my certification, and it wasn't with the intent of I want to work in junior high because the certification that I was going for was early childhood through six,
Okay.
right? So I could come in, oh, I could be a sixth grade teacher right off the bat, right? That'll be easy. It's not so easy when you have no experience. So, so I knew that I had to start somewhere, but after all those years, after a decade, right, of trying different things, trying different grades, going from third to fourth to fifth, and then finally reaching the point that I wanted to reach so long ago and teach that age group that is really a strong point for me, where I feel the most comfortable. Yeah, that was a good day. That was a good day whenever they offered me that job, for sure. Um, and I would also say, I guess, anytime I get encouragement from students,
Mm,
um, which I I'm definitely a feelings oriented guy.
okay.
Most people that know me can attest to that.
Hmm.
Um, so words of encouragement, right? I love to get them as much as I love to give them. And anytime I get something from students, granted, sometimes they're told to do it, by like everyone choose a teacher and write an encouraging note, and like, oh,
Hmm.
I'll choose Mr. Whiteley, whatever. And and then sometimes I'll get some, it's teacher appreciation, and I get these notes, right? And you always know, and it's like the parent that like made them write the note.
Right.
Like it just says, thanks for being my teacher, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's not like I had much of a choice. It wasn't like I picked you out of a lineup here, but you're welcome, I think. Um, and then there are some notes that you get, and they like fill up a whole note card,
Right.
of here are the things that you specifically did that made this class enjoyable.
Hmm.
Um, when I normally hear this from some of my young men. Um, I hate to read. They come in. I ask them at the beginning of the year. What books have you read this summer? No, books. That's just not what they do. And they tell me at the end of the year, like, I like reading now. right? You made reading fun. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that you could give me, that makes me feel like I'm doing my job or I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. You know, like I am supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be teaching them. I mean, the way that they're responding to what I am doing, how I am doing it, the connections that I have with them, you know, that's those days are great for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I still keep some of the notes
Mhm.
that students have given me, um, just because they were so nice.
Right, right.
Like you knew that they meant it. Um, and yeah, it feels good to know that not only are you making a difference, but there's some validation there. And that validation is not forced or coerced. It's because like they mean it.
Exactly.
So,
Well, I mean, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said like this shows you this is where you're supposed to be. Uh, I'm
hmm
I am a firm believer in um, you know a religious person that says, God puts us in places where we are supposed to be. And when
100%.
it's that letter from that student that says, you get me, you help me
hmm
to do X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
then yes, that is a message telling you, hey, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're making
Yeah,
that
that's
difference,
exactly how it feels.
you know and just like you, man, I have a um old photo album that I take all
hmm
of those notes and I put the kids notes in there because like just like you, man, that shows me I am where I'm supposed to be.
What's
And
a photo album?
are you serious? Yeah.
I'm joking.
No, all of the youngins listening to the podcast are asking that same question. We used to have to get our pictures developed. They weren't on,
hmm
so
One
we
hour photo.
crazy. Yeah, and and I don't even I say stuff like that and I don't even think about it. And like my
hmm
son, they know what a photo album is because I have one. But like
hmm
if I wasn't their parent, they wouldn't know what a photo.
No.
That's
Mm-mm.
great. That's
I
crazy.
don't know what film is.
They don't know about getting it developed.
No.
That's crazy though. Hey, day and age we live in.
hmm That's right.
And so now we're come to the namesake of the podcast, the what I like to call your favorite teacher's favorite teacher. And as you said earlier, I'm sure you are quite a few students, and I've heard some students on campus say it that you are their
hmm
favorite teacher. And in this part of the podcast, in this segment, I like for you to talk about some teachers or individuals in your life that have influenced you.
hmm
Tell them about your favorite teachers throughout your life.
So I have one that is in education and one that is not, because they both impacted me in equal ways. So I'll go with the school one first.
Oh,
Um, so I told you earlier I teach reading
mhm,
and writing, a little bit of social studies, right? So you might find it odd that my favorite teacher that I've ever had was a science teacher. I, I'm I don't have a science brain. My dad, he's a newly retired engineer, so I mean he knows all the calculus equations and how to balance equations and numbers, and that's just not me.
right.
Um, I'm I'm definitely more of a wordsmith.
Hmm.
Um, so I always liked reading, always. I always had a book in my hand growing up, and I remember coming into high school, as a newly appointed freshman, going into it. Um, and I think high school was the first time that I really started hearing things from other students about certain teachers where
Mm.
it was like, oh, you don't want this one. Oh, you need to stay away from that teacher. But I'm like, what can I do about it? I like their name is on my schedule. I have to. Well, you're gonna have a long year because you have, Mr. So and so. Um, and the teacher that I got, her name was Mrs. Pearlstein,
Mm.
and she taught ninth grade biology pre-AP. And she was the last class that I had in the day. And she was the teacher that everybody said, you're going to love her. She is the coolest teacher ever. She's fun. She cracks jokes. Like she talks to you in the hallway, that kind of teacher. And and I go to her room and I could visualize where her room is in my high school, right? I'd go up the stairs, turn the corner in the hallway, and it's the first door on the right. And and I turn and I see this little like 4.5, maybe 5 foot, um, I don't want to say old, wisdom filled lady. And I'm going, really? This is the teacher everyone's talking about? Like, like, I don't know, right? And I walked up to her and I said, "Hi, my name is," and before I could even finish the sentence, she went, "Chris, have we met before?" No. She took the time before school began to learn everybody's name that was in her class and what they looked like so that when they came in, they knew that, like, she knew who they were, but that's the kind of first impression that she wanted to make.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
a major first
I
impression.
like I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I probably learned more than I ever learned about anything else in her. I still remember some of the lessons to this day. Do I use those lessons? I don't know. I don't know. My job today doesn't have a whole lot to do with biology, but I remember those lessons specifically because of the kind of teacher that she was.
Wow.
That's how I remembered what she had to say. That's why those lessons have stuck with me. I remember the things that she said about certain topics. Um, and because she was like the first door on the right down the hall, um, throughout, sophomore, junior, senior year, I would pass by her room on a daily basis.
Wow.
And she would always, always have time for not just me, but I mean everybody, right?
Oh,
Um, I mimic a lot of what I do as a teacher from the things that I saw in her
wow.
because that was the teacher that I wished all of my teachers were like.
Yeah.
I wish they all had, that they had that desire to have that rapport with their students because it made me care about what she had to say. Um, it made me it made me want to do better in her class,
So
right?
this is interesting to me, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like
That's okay.
a dying question that I have to ask, and
Okay.
I'm sure the audience would like to know this too. So let me ask you this: if we strip away the rapport that
hmm
she built with you, um,
hmm
and all of the other students, do you think that her lessons would have been as memorable as they?
Abs Absolutely not.
Wow,
No. No,
wow.
because like I said, I am not someone who naturally enjoys science.
Hmm.
I just don't. Um, what makes a great teacher to me more than a great lesson is a great communicator,
Right,
a great um, counselor on some days,
right.
a great cheerleader on other days,
Hmm.
um, someone that takes an interest in the students in some way. It ain't going to matter what you have to say.
Hmm.
They will go to the ends of the earth for you if you tell them, if
Right.
they feel like you care about them.
Hmm.
And in the day and times that we live in today, um, there's not a natural respect from student to teacher like it used to be.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do.
Like it's not assumed just because you're the teacher and they're the student that they're going to care about what you have to say. That's just not education anymore. And anyone that runs their classrooms that way, that might be why they're feeling some burnout, you
That
know,
I mean,
because they're not putting as much effort into the interpersonal connections that students today have to have in order to care about what you have to say. Like
well,
it's an essential piece.
for those teachers out in the audience right now, if you do feel like you're having burnout, I would suggest to try what Mr. Whiteley's teacher did. get to know your students, like surprise them. I know we have with our system, our tax system, we can actually see what the student looks like before the student comes in. You know,
Hmm.
me, listen, my memory is not that good. I can tell you off rip, I would never be able to do what she did. Like,
Yeah, I'm with you. That would be pretty difficult for me.
but I build rapport in a different way
Hmm.
with my students. Eh, maybe if you find yourself struggling with your students, find that uh, rapport building method that works best for you.
Hmm.
Man, like that what you identified in that teacher is so powerful, man.
Hmm.
It's and that's why I asked that question. Like, if you
Hmm.
were to remove the rapport that she built with you and all the other students, would her lesson be as
That it
meaningful as it
And
was?
it's amazing as an educator now thinking about, all of the teachers that I've had, over the course of my life,
Hmm.
what has made them memorable or what has made them forgettable,
Mm,
you know? And I remember so little about what teachers have taught me, but I remember everything about the way they treated me.
mm, yep, yeah, that is so true, so true. And it's not, and I'll even say this. I'll take it even a step further. It isn't about you being nice and kind to the students. It's more about you showing that you care. Uh,
Hmm.
favorite teacher, man. That dude was not nice at all, but he cared, and it took
Hmm.
years to realize how much he cared and the impact that he really had on my education. So,
Right.
um, yes, yeah, man, that's huge. And you
Hmm.
said you had another teacher that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. I actually thought about this one the other day as I was thinking about what is my favorite. I thought of the first one that I mispronounced. I thought of her immediately. Um, but then this other one came to mind, and I go, oh yeah, that one was a big influence too. Um, his name was Monty Jennings, and he was my pastor when I was going to church as a little boy,
Oh, okay.
and he challenged me in a way that really pulled me out of my comfort zone. But I don't know if I've ever gotten the chance to address this to him, but that his challenge to me put me on the track to what I am doing today.
Wow.
Um, I was a very shy kid, and I tell my students this too. I said I used to be a very shy kid, and they're like, "You're such a liar, Mr. Whiteley." Like, what? You are not shy at all. Yes, if you saw me when I was 7, 8, 9, I did not stick my neck out to be heard ever,
Hmm.
right? Um, which is probably why I became such an avid reader. My head was always buried in books, right? That was my escape. Um, and this pastor of mine, he came up to me, and we were already kind of family friends with him at the time, so it wasn't like he just came and talked to me out of the blue. Like I knew who he was. I've had conversations with him in the past, and he said, "I want to talk to you about doing something for our church, right?" And I'm thinking he's going to ask me like to, I don't know, paint a poster, write something, what is it? He said, a few Sundays from now, we're going to be highlighting our young people and what they do. And I would like for you to get up and give a 2 to 3 minute speech about what the church means to you.
Mm,
I so badly wanted to say no, thank you, but you can't tell your pastor no,
right,
you know? Like, obviously, like he picked me for some reason. I didn't know what the reason was because I'd never done anything like that before.
right.
Um, and I'm pretty sure that from that point to the 2 weeks later, I don't think I slept a minute. I think I was just awake for 2 straight weeks because I was just so nervous about what I was going to have to do in front of all of these people. And we were a pretty sizable church, like 400 people, Um, and I had it written on my little note cards, right? I had it word for word. Um, and they fit me with a little microphone, and I go up there and he says, I have a special guest that I want to invite onto the stage, right? Um, and he said my name, and I go up and say my little thing, and I was so worried I was going to drop the cards everywhere, but I didn't. Held on to them, said everything. My voice didn't crack. Um, and I was ready for it to be done. I was ready for it to be over with. And it was done. I walked back down and it was just kind of this just sigh of, oh, that's over. I don't have to do it again, ever again. And I had people come up to me afterwards like, you did such a good job. You sounded so good. I'm like, you have to say that. We're in church. And then my pastor, Monty, comes back up to me after it was all over, and he said this one sentence that I've never forgotten. He said, "You are going to be a public speaker one day." Like almost like it was a prophetic message. You know what I mean? And in the moment, I didn't really think much of it. But I remember on the car ride home thinking, you know, did he see something in me that I've never seen in myself? Right? Like, could I give more than what I have been? Like, was he trying to get me out of my shell, or does he really think that there's something to this? And I started getting a little braver with the things that I did. Like, I remember I tried out for like a play in junior high. Like I never would have done that, you know? Started taking on some leadership roles, started speaking in front of other people, um, and eventually made a career out of public speaking, right? Um, Teaching is a performance art every day.
Yes.
And I owe everything that I do to that one moment where this teacher challenged me to do something that I didn't know I could do.
Wow.
It all led back to that one, and I didn't even know that that was a moment until later on in my life. Where I could trace it all back to I didn't start having a desire to want to do anything resembling public speaking until someone challenged me to do public speaking.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think about that whenever I'm teaching and I have students that don't want to do XYZ because they think they're not good at it, or I've never done that before, right? And I never give them the easy way out and say, well, if you're uncomfortable with it, you don't have to do it. I don't let them
Yep.
because this experience could be a moment of discovery for them
Yep.
that they didn't know that they could do something, and it could start them on a fast track to a career for the rest of their life. Because that's what happened with me. And I owe so much of what I do, um, and the innate love and desire that I have to hear my own voice in front of other people is because of him.
Wow. You hear that, teachers? You hear what he just said. And this is this is the power of education, the impact of being a teacher. Just simple words, a
Hmm.
simple phrase can change the trajectory of young people.
Hmm.
A kid may be going down one path, and just your words of encouragement or you telling them that you believe in them
Hmm.
put them in the path of becoming a multi-billionaire or somebody
Hmm.
changes the world or somebody who finds the cure to cancer. Just off of you saying simple things like I believe that you can do this.
Hmm.
That's I want every teacher that within the sound of my voice to understand the impact that you have. And Mr. Whiteley's story of his pastor is affirmation of that. Man, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that with the audience, man. That
Sure.
goosebumps. Man, that gave me goosebumps, man. Because like to actually hear it, as an educator, and you doing this as long as you have, um, I'm sure you've seen some of your students become adults, and you're like, man, wow, look at the fantastic things that this adult has done.
Hmm.
I can only hope that I played some small role in the adult that they have become.
Absolutely. You want to be able to know that you by what's inside of you and the message that you communicate to them that you contributed to their ability to believe in themselves. You don't want to say you contributed to, their success, but like that you showed them the window, or I guess you showed them the door that they could walk through and get to the other side that they didn't know was there.
Right, right. And if you weren't in that path, man, if that pastor was not there in your path,
Yeah, we wouldn't be having this interview today, probably.
just think about it, man. Wow.
Hmm.
The power of teachers. Okay, so now we have come to the next portion of the podcast, the part that I love to call a word or a phrase. And before the podcast, we talked briefly, and I know you got three phrases that you would like to share with the audience. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna let you go into your phrases.
All right. So my first one, and this kind of goes along with some of the stuff I've already said,
Mhm.
but be the teacher you wish you had when you were their age. When I think back to, you know, Mrs. Pearlstein and the kind of teacher that she was, right? And everybody loved her, right? And students talk. They know which ones are like, oh man, you got a rough schedule. Like they know, right? And they're not dumb either. They can see right through a teacher that's being disingenuous with their words, like, oh, I care about you. I'm so glad you're here. And then you yell at them all the time, right? They're like, uh-huh, sure. So I think back to what kind of teacher would I have wanted to have? And that's the teacher that I want to be. So that's my first one. Um, my second one, and it's kind of connected to a poster that's in this room. It's over here on my right there. Yeah, right there. And the poster and some of the words are a little small, but I have this poster obviously in my room in here, right? Um, and I also have it in my room, and it says, little by little, a little becomes a lot. You're not going to be super successful at everything your first try, that it takes time to be successful. So just because you may have failed on this one task, it doesn't mean that you are a failure. So it those little victories are worth celebrating because that little victory gets you closer and closer to where you want to be. Whether it's, you know, teaching, parenting, you know, um, exercising, trying to get healthier, you know, um, trying to get a master's degree. I mean, I remember it felt so daunting at first. I got all these classes, all these papers I have to write. Like, oh my goodness, I got a long road ahead of me, right? But it all started somewhere. And little by little, I look back on everything that I've written, everything that I've produced, everything that I've generated, everything that I've learned, and it's a lot, right? But it's taken over a year, 52 weeks, 52 weekends, right? So many late night study sessions to get to this point, so many sacrifices, but you'll get there, right? So determination, right? And it's something I need my students to know that it's okay if you're not good at something now,
Mm,
right? I don't say, it's okay if you're not good at something. Say it's okay if you're not good at something now, but
mm.
it doesn't mean it has to stay that way, right? Little by little, a little becomes a lot. Um, you got time for a third one?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
got.
So one of my favorite shows is Ted Lasso. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on here or whatever. I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
if you get a sponsorship from Apple TV or something, but um, and so I got this Believe poster up here. If you've seen the show, you know the connection to that poster. Um, but and there is so much knowledge and wisdom in that show, so much. But there's one thing that he says in the show that I have a little poster in my room too that has this phrase, right? And if you've seen the show, you probably know the phrase, be a goldfish. On the show, he says the goldfish is, and I don't know if this is true. I've never actually looked it up, right? But I mean, it's on TV, so it must be true. Um, that a goldfish has the shortest attention span of any animal. So we're going to pretend that that is true, what he's saying. And so he says, be a goldfish. He's talking to one of his players, keeps making mistakes over and over again. Be a goldfish. Forget the mistakes that you made and just move forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? And teaching junior high students, it is much more challenging for them to do that than elementary school. I thought it was going to be the other way around,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
I thought elementary school students, they make a mistake. Oh my gosh. And they, just can't contain themselves, right? Junior high students are very hard on themselves. Like they are very tough critics of themselves.
They are.
And it's hard for many of them to let their failures go or not let those failures attach them to themselves
Mm-hmm.
and affect what they do in the future. So I like to make sure that students know in my room that it's okay to make mistakes. This is not a mistake-free zone. And when you make a mistake, when you get something wrong, and we're having a conversation and your share is just completely out in left field, right? That's okay.
There
That's all right. Okay. Be a goldfish.
you go.
Okay. Just we move on. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and we move on. Um,
Well, I mean, I love that, um, because in today's society, uh, our young people today think that uh, that journey is instantaneous.
hmm
They look at social media, they see these people on social media living the life and not
hmm
realizing either A, it's fake, or B, to get there, you have to fail many times over in order to
Yeah.
do that. These multi-billion-dollar companies have failed so many times in
hmm
order to get to where they are.
Well,
Um,
and that combined with this, the look of society with instant gratification. You want something, you get it,
yeah.
right? You order something on Amazon, you get it tomorrow morning,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
ordered something the other day, and on the shipping it said it will take a week to get here. I ain't waiting a week. Are you kidding me? But that's the society that we live in
Right.
because we want things now, and we think that if I can't get it now, it's not worth it.
Mm-mm. That's not.
And that's just untrue because anyone that is successful will tell you that it didn't happen overnight.
Yep. That is. Yes. 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 Many times over. I tell my students on a regular basis, like anything that I am successful at, like I have put in so many hours to get there. So one of the things, and it's funny that you say this because um, uh, we were at the PLC Academy and we were actually talking about what can we do as a campus to create that environment where students feel comfortable with making mistakes, with failing,
Mhm.
because it's that failure that they learn from to become better. And
And that's an art form in itself is failing. How do you fail forward? How do you become okay with making a mistake? Because a lot of people are not.
right, right.
They don't try for fear of failure.
Yes, that is so true. And I think you said it at the beginning of this. Like the middle school kids that we have today, they are
hmm
so afraid of that failure. I can't
hmm
tell you like how many times when a student makes a mistake, the first thing that they say, like they get frustrated, and the first thing they say to me, well, just tell me what the right answer is.
Yeah,
Don't want to work through the thought process that it takes to get to the end. They just,
right.
like you said, that instant gratification. What is the correct answer?
hmm
What do I need to put down on this paper to get you off my back and keep it? You know?
Yep,
Oh man.
definitely.
And I know I can sit here and talk about that for hours on end, but
I think
I'm
we both
gonna
could.
I'm gonna bring the podcast to the end, and we've come to the last section of the podcast, a new part that
hmm
I like to uh, just have uh, the person that is on the podcast just talk to the parents, to those people who are not educators, anybody that's listening that like doesn't know the day to day of education, and just tell them how you feel. You know what? I think that's what I'm going to name this section. The section that I like to call "Tell them how you feel."
Tell them
at
how
the
you
end.
feel.
I want
Oh,
you
I mean,
to
how
talk.
much time you got? I mean,
Listen, I mean, to me, like honestly, like to me, this is extremely important because
sure.
that divide that is starting to occur between the parents and the teacher, man, it's getting so huge,
Hmm.
and I think that's because of a lack of understanding of what the landscape of education is today.
Mm.
Because if you think back to when we were kids, like the things that our teachers had to do is not the same things that we have to do. I have buddies that have been in education for over 20 years now. And what they did at the beginning of education versus what they have to do now is like so much different. And so
Yeah.
the parents today and those people outside of education have a
Hmm.
reference point of what they saw in education, how they viewed education, and what they went through in school. And they don't understand that that's not how education is today. And they don't
Right.
understand that what teachers go through today is not what teachers went through back in those days. And so, like this segment that I'm doing now, I want all of the educators to give that experience to those laymen, those people who haven't been in education, that
Hmm.
haven't been in education for over 10, 15 years, to actually understand what it is that we're going through as educators. So, man, you know, I am laying this out. You take as long as you need to talk to them and get
Maybe
them.
go get a snack or something and come back. No,
You got it, man. I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over to
no. Well, it's I don't have too much, but um, it all comes to I guess this one comment because you let me know you're going to ask this ahead of time,
you. Mhm.
right? Um, and I think for me, I wish that those who are not in education, parents, guardians, anyone who takes care of their kids and they go to school, I wish they knew how much teachers take their work home with them. Number one. And I mean that literally, and I also mean that emotionally or mentally. Um, teachers and, and anytime summer rolls around, right? I always got friends or, you know, family that was, man, I bet it's nice to have summer off. I bet it's nice to, only have to work 10 months out of the year, you know? And I want to tell them like, man, if you only knew how much I work during the school year, I guarantee you it makes up for it. The number of things that I do before or after the bell rings, you know, to make sure that my classroom is as dynamic as I expect it to be. That the things that I'm doing in class and what is being produced on my end is something that will be received on their end. I want it to be something that I am proud of because I have expectations for myself. And then sometimes, the custodians come by and they're like, you have to leave, and I'm like, well, I got to take it home with me, and I come home and I'm working on something and I'm sitting at the dinner table and I'm trying to type something up that maybe there's a report that I need to get done or I have an art tomorrow or I have to meet with a parent and they're all good things, they're all essential things, but they take time, to generate, and there's not enough hours in the workday to be able to say, especially when it's something that has a due date attached to it, that I have to stop and do these things. I can't just put a pause button on my classroom. And so, yeah, there are definitely days that I take things home with me because that is the only time I have to do it. Um, Grading, let me tell you, living in a time when grading was all done by hand, which is when I first started,
Right.
but now living in a time where, all students have some level of technology, and so you can put those quizzes into the computer and the computer grades it for you and it just spits out the grades for you, right? And it's just awesome, and you can't do that with everything, but the ones you can, you're pretty thankful for it. It's something I try not to take for granted. But there's a lot of time that is spent in my house doing things for my job. Um, because I want to be successful at my job. Teachers cannot be successful if the only time they work is 8 to 5. They just won't. They won't be as successful. Um, and I also say it emotionally and mentally because I think about those things very often. And I know that there's good advice out there that it's like don't take your work home with you, right? And they're talking about, the mental side of it. And that's really hard to do as an educator because you're thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow? How is this all going to be laid out? That one student that I know is struggling, and no matter what I do, I just can't seem to make a connection with them. Like, what is it that I have not tried? And you're sitting there and you're laying in bed and you're on your phone, while your wife is trying to sleep, and she's like, "What are you looking at?" I'm like, "I'm trying to look up, teaching strategies," right? And it's like 11:30 at night. Because you want to help them, right? That's your job. Um, and you worry about them, you get excited with them. Um, you Maybe you spend time going to sporting events so that you can support them in their endeavors, or maybe you're a teacher coach and you have to be there, right? And it's just even more time. So I wish that everybody knew just how much teachers work that that goes unseen, or that goes, I guess, off the clock, because it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think I do a lot. And there are teachers that I work with and they do more than I do. And I'm like, I don't know how you have a personal life, right? Because they're doing, teaching, and they're coaching this, and their team lead, and they have meetings, and they're trying to do, like, they're doing all of these things. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it, you know? Um, and we do it because we want to. We do it because we're passionate about our job, and we care about our job, and we want to be successful. We want our students to be successful, and we want them to know that we care about who they are, right? And and it is so hard to put all of that aside on some days and say, okay, I got to give attention to my spouse. I got to give attention to my kids. I got to give attention to my family. I got to give attention to, my house. My garage is a mess. The lawn hasn't been mowed in a month, and so you have all these things that you want to do, and you're trying to prioritize what's most important. And that can be really, really hard for a teacher because it feels like everything's important, you know?
I man, man, I hope they hear you because they don't know. They don't know.
Hmm.
I know. I come into education from having another profession, and I've always dreamed about being in education. And my thought and my view of what a teacher is and does, it got turned upside down on its head once I got into education. Um, I cannot tell you how many late nights in those first few years that I spent just trying to learn about education, pedagogy,
Hmm.
trying to learn different teaching strategies, trying to learn how to manage behaviors in the classroom. And uh, here I am, 10 years into it, and I'm still just like you, looking up research on how to address uh, everything from pedagogy to
Hmm.
behavior. It's
And I think the older that you get to in education, the more years that you have under your belt in education, I think the more that you realize that you can't sidestep some of this stuff. You can't just hope and wish and pray that you get great students that will listen to you. You know,
it,
it doesn't work. I pray that prayer a lot, and it just doesn't work, um, because there are so many things that must happen for your classroom to be successful, and you can't shortcut those things. They take time, and they take sacrifice, uh, time away from other things that you could be doing, or maybe that you would rather be doing. Um, and you learn that that's just part of the job. It's just the nature of the career, right? And so that when that summer does roll around, it's like it's not that, oh, I get time off. It's more like, oh, I earned this. Like I feel like I put so much effort into it in those 10, like I feel like I did 12 months of work in a 10-month span. Maybe more than 12 months. I don't know.
Well, don't forget
But
about the fact that even during the summertime, you're still working because I know you're putting that
hey,
together to do to present
hmm
conference. So and
yep.
and the learning that we do over the summer as well.
hmm
It is so much, man. It
It
is
is. It's a lot, but we do it because we love what we do.
exactly.
We do it because we like the role that we have in young people's lives, right? And I think with anything that people are passionate about, it doesn't become so much of a sacrifice. You do it because you want to, right? Um, so it's hard whenever you hear things about, you know, teachers don't work hard enough, right? Or let's give teachers more things. Let's put more expectations on their plate, you know. Um, why should we pay teachers more than what they get paid right now? You know, um, and it's hard to hear sometimes as a experienced, somewhat veteran educator that the value that other people have in teachers, not everyone, but some people, is that they're not using the right judgment on it. It's hard to hear that we're not as valued in some areas. Um, and not because we teach perfectly, but just we work hard because we want to be successful. We want these kids to grow up and do something meaningful with their life, and that's a passion for us. Um, so it I don't want to go off into politics or anything like that. That's a different podcast.
I,
But
I do appreciate everything that you just said. And for the audience out there, please, uh, everything that he said is true. Just understand that he's not making it up. And as you listen more to the podcast, you'll hear more and more educators saying that. And that's the importance of me creating this section of the podcast because I want them to like talk to you guys and let them know what's going on. And with that, we have come to the end of the podcast. So what I like to do at the end is have our guests to tell the audience where they can locate you, where they can find you, where you at on the social medias, all of that.
mhm,
So if they want to follow you, that they can. So
sure. So educational wise, I have a Twitter or X or whatever it's called today, at Mr. C. Whiteley. So Whiteley. So that's where I put all of my educational stuff. So at Mr. C. Whiteley.
yes, and it is a great Twitter feed too because he put some amazing stuff that his students are doing on there. Like
Oh yeah, we have a good time.
it's great. So, with that being said, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening again, and peace. We're out of here. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Your Favorite Teacher's Favorite Teacher podcast. If you have a story you'd like to share, please contact me at wdstubblefield@wdsi.us. Again, that is wdstubblefield@wdsi.us. And you could be our next inspirational story of how educators impact our lives. I'm your host, Mr. Stubblefield, and I want you to remember, no profession is possible without your favorite teacher.